This is a lecture for week 4 of Adler Graduate School course number 771, Creating and Assessing the Therapeutic Alliance. The topic of this lecture is the construct of task in the therapeutic relationship. First, I will go over the items of the task subscale of the Working Alliance inventory. After reviewing these items, I'm going to discuss some highlights from the individual psychology and the general psychotherapy literature on the task in therapeutic relationship. I finish with the proposition that a working knowledge of the curative factors and processes in psychotherapy is one of the primary contributions the therapist makes to the task component of the Working Alliance. This course approaches the therapeutic alliance from 4 interrelated perspectives: informed consent, bond, task, and goal. The focus of this lecture is task. I will be using the 12 items from the task subscale of the Working Alliance inventory to define and discuss the construct of task in the therapeutic relationship. Then I will present some of the literature from individual psychology and psychotherapy to enhance our understanding of the construct of task in the therapeutic relationship. First, let's consider the general definition of task. A task is a piece of work with the implication that it has been assigned or given to someone to complete and is to be finished within a certain period of time. There is also an implication that a task is harder or unpleasant and yet has to be done. Duty, job, and chore are good synonyms. If we think of bond as primarily related to the interpersonal process in the therapeutic relationship, the task will be primarily the content of the relationship interchanges. Instead of focusing on what is being said or on what technique is being used in the therapy session, the Working Alliance inventory focuses on a clear division of labor in the therapy relationship, a clear definition of responsibilities, and an agreement between therapist and client about what to do in therapy. This echoes some of the components of informed consent that we covered earlier and calls for an ongoing agreement to work together within the expectations and boundaries that have been agreed upon by both parties. The task subscale of the Working Alliance inventory is also interested in the level of confidence that the therapist and the client have in the treatment plan. For the therapist, I believe this means having an array of interventions in the tool bag and empirical support for these interventions in the literature. These negative items mostly reflect the informed consent and respectful style of relating that we were just talking about. However, item 11 adds a new dimension: efficiency. I suppose it is disrespectful to waste another person's time, and it certainly isn't moving toward the completion of the task at hand. And I think it is primarily the therapist's responsibility to keep the therapy on track and moving ahead. These quotes from Alfred Adler express the individual psychology approach to the task of psychotherapy: cooperating and working together in a calm, scientific manner. The tradition of individual psychology treatment includes the use of education, counseling, and psychotherapy as curative processes. In the education mode, exemplified by the history of parent training, but also evident in therapy relationships, the person changes their behavior because they have new information. In the counseling mode, the person changes their behavior as a result of coaching, guidance, and encouragement. Both of these modes assume that a change in behavior leads to a change in core convictions and a realignment of the fictional final goal. The psychotherapy mode utilizes insight of the person into underlying motives and beliefs to affect change in the person. Rudolf Dreikurs spells out 4 phases of psychotherapy: relationship, psychological investigation, interpretation, and reorientation. While the first phase seems to fall under the bond construct of the working alliance, the other 3 phases define tasks of individual psychology psychotherapy. The process of psychological investigation involves a gathering of information and a testing of hypotheses in a psychotic dialogue. The individual psychology therapist considers the presenting problems in the context of the developmental history, family constellation, and lifestyle data, and seeks to understand the purpose and psychological context of the behavior or symptom in question. The process of interpretation involves the use of language and behavior to assist the client in understanding the underlying motivations for the lifestyle decisions involved in the behaviors or problems in question. The interpretation process assists the client in gaining this understanding with a minimum of shame, guilt, or anxiety. The idea is that psychological insight is best obtained when one feels able to join in with the therapist or the community at large and feels less stigmatized by their symptoms, actions, or experiences. The process of reorientation and reintegration involves the client working through the applications of the insight in the various components of their developmental and social life experience. With a newfound understanding of the purpose of a behavior, the person is in a position to make increasingly adaptive decisions in the course of their life and to have an increasing sense of control and mastery in their daily living. In the psychodynamic tradition, transference refers to the client's distortions of relationship experience, and a transference interpretation might focus on the therapeutic relationship, current life relationships, or early childhood relationships. In fact, the guideline in psychodynamic psychotherapy that I was taught is to include all 3. So you might say to a client, "You seem to be feeling angry and impotent towards me, like you did with your partner this morning, and like you did with your father during your childhood." There are many strategies for disputing a client's mistaken beliefs. Ellis emphasized the irrational nature of these beliefs. Many individual psychology therapists talk about a Socratic dialogue with the client regarding the way they are interpreting the world and relating to people, which has the net result of disputing a mistaken belief. One characteristic of the neurotic lifestyle is to select only evidence that confirms the mistaken belief and not see evidence that might disconfirm this mistaken belief. The bond component of the working alliance, especially unconditional positive regard, creates a relationship that is disconfirming of the client's basic assumption about themselves and about others. The therapist can listen for other disconfirming data in the client's life experience and can encourage the client to try new behaviors to see if their predictions come true. As a matter of fact, many cognitive therapists work with a client to create behavioral experiments in which they systematically gather actual data about a prediction they have made. This can be very effective, especially when the client can see the alternative view being presented by the therapist, but doubts its validity. I think of the therapy relationship as a contract between the therapist and the client, with each bringing responsibilities and expertise to the relationship. The client is an expert on their feelings, experience, and functioning, and is responsible for sharing these as openly as possible in therapy. In this contract, it is the therapist's responsibility to have a working knowledge of the curative factors and processes in psychotherapy, to be an expert in how people change, and to educate the client about these processes as they become a part of the client's treatment plan.